Phil's not coming, so if you want to have more space, you can go to that table. Move over.
Okay.
Then we have more space. Okay.
Yep. I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you.
Do you want any coffee or anything? I got a water bottle for
Water
you.
will be good. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you last night.
Yeah, it was a great event.
Phil's coming.
Actually, Jim just told me
Well, good morning, everybody.
he's going to move over.
We're just trying to get this put together on time this morning, so we're going to sit down and
Cut out a little bit. Phil's not coming.
take your seats.
Where am I at? With you?
My name is Jim Kirsten. We're here with Iowa Central, and we're very happy to help co-host this with the Growth Alliance, and we appreciate the really good turnout today. We also have some people online, as long as our technology is going to work, listening in. What we'll do is we'll have opening brief comments from each of the members of the Iowa House, Senate, and Congressman Feenstra. We'll have them start off with 1 or 2 minutes, and then what we ask is that for those who have questions, please raise your hand, and Kelly Hinman will come down and bring you a piece of paper and a pencil. Write those questions down, and we'll sift them and bring them up to me. So without further ado, we want to welcome all the members, and also want to remember to tell you that during the answers of other members that are talking, try to keep your table talk down because the mics will pick up all the conversation. With that, I think we'll let Congressman Feenstra make the opening comments.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming today. It's 10 degrees outside, but we're here, and we are all government together. We the people, right? We the people are government, and I always think about that when I'm in D.C., that we're all in this together, and this is a great way for us to communicate. So I don't know if all of you know me. I first want to say thank you to Iowa Central. Jim Kirsten, thank you for all you do, and then also for the Growth Alliance for putting this on. But so I'm in my first term in D.C. in Congress, and I sit on the Ag Committee, which we do a lot of work for production agriculture, looking at the next farm bill coming up here in the next year, which is really significant. The farm bill sort of dictates everything that happens in farm production. I also sit on the Science and Technology Committee, and the number one issue right now is twofold. We're working on broadband, trying to get broadband throughout rural Iowa, get everybody connected, and then also looking at China, and there's so much going on with technology, China versus the U.S. and hypersonics and all this other stuff, and so we're deep in the weeds in that stuff. It's just shocking to tell you what's happening above us, and we don't even realize what's happening, but there's a massive war going on right now with satellites and all this stuff, and we're learning about it in science and technology. And then the budget. I sit on the Budget Committee. Obviously, many of you know we have $30 trillion in debt, causing extreme inflation. We sit at the kitchen table, and all our products are going up by 10 to 20%. So this is a big deal. And in Iowa, working with Tim Kryenbrink and then Green and Ann Meyer, we have a balanced budget every year. We have a 99% spending limit. So that's what we're trying to push at the federal level, trying to get our budget back in order. And to me, this is so crucial as we move forward. So again, thank you for letting me be here, and I look forward to your questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. This is a great turnout. Thanks to Iowa Central for hosting, and thanks to Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance for putting it on again. This year we've just finished up our third week. My focus right now is subcommittee and committee work. I chair the Human Resources Committee, which is the Health Policy Committee in the Iowa House. This year we've got several priorities. Number one that we introduced the first week is some four bills that will address the mental health crisis in the state. The first one, we are proposing 12 new psychiatry residencies in partnership with University of Iowa and the state through the DHS mental health institutes. Number one, that's going to put providers in the pipeline. Right now, we don't have enough physicians in Iowa to care for the patients. Number two, we're increasing the loan repayment program. This is going to keep providers in Iowa, and not just physicians. It's going to be physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and therapists in the state of Iowa. What it is, it's a loan repayment program over 5 years, and hopefully at that time when you're starting in your career, you have a 5-year stay in an area. Hopefully you're putting down roots, and then we're going to keep more practitioners. The third issue is opening critical beds for complex needs patients. We have done a lot in legislature, even since I've been there. The first year I was there, we passed the framework for children's mental health. Just last year, we had a huge win with telehealth parity for mental health visits. Providers are being reimbursed at the same rate as an in-person visit. It doesn't work for every patient, but then it does work for a lot of patients, especially in rural Iowa. Telehealth increases access to patients in rural Iowa that might typically have to drive an hour or two. So we've done a lot, but I'm still hearing from our law enforcement, Sheriff Fleener, Roger Porter. I'm still hearing from the hospitals, especially the rural hospitals, that we're still seeing patients waiting in the emergency room for days and days with no treatment. And the fourth is developing a rate to take care of those complex needs patients. So, and I'll liken that to just a regular hospital where you're on a regular floor getting routine care as opposed to a patient in the ICU. That's a much more intense rate, and providers are reimbursed at a higher rate for that level of care. So this will do the same thing for mental health. And so we're really excited about that. We haven't had any resistance from these bills, and they've passed through committee. We are going to be making a few changes to them because any bill that's introduced, it never ends up at the governor's desk in the same form. So I'm very excited about those bills, and I hope we can make a difference this year. A few of the other priorities we're working on is still child care. We've already passed several bills through the committee to address that, and then just priorities from our committee members. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to serve you down in Des Moines, and I look forward to your questions.
Jesse.
Well, Happy New Year.
Have to be pull it closer.
Well, Happy New Year. It's good to see everybody, and it's great to see so many people here. So this is my second year in the legislature, and it's a lot better feeling this year, knowing how to file a bill and get going right away on day one. There's a lot of exciting things happening this year. I'm vice chair of Labor Committee, and usually Labor Committee is not that active of a committee, but this year I think it's going to be a pretty historic year. We're going to do unemployment reform, and the governor came out with her proposal of wanting to lessen how many weeks somebody can file for unemployment from 26 weeks, which has been the standard since 1950, down to 16 weeks for a standard. It's definitely a move in the right direction. Chairman Dickey and I, we would like to go with an indexing system where in good economic times with low unemployment and high job availability, there's no reason to go above 12 weeks of how long somebody, in our opinion, how long somebody can apply for unemployment. In poor economic times with high unemployment and low job availability, maybe we should ratchet that up to 20 weeks or something like that. We'll determine the week.
There are some states like Florida. It seems like Florida is a gold standard for a lot of laws. They index like what we're talking about. They've saved billions. They've been able to do a lot with that money that they've saved. Another state that we kind of look at as a standard instead of indexing is Missouri. They have a standard of 13 weeks. And so when you look at those two different states, I feel more comfortable with the indexing. This week I was really excited to talk about a Convention of States. This effort has been around for a long time, and what Convention of States is, it's never happened in history. In Article 5 of the Constitution, the Founding Fathers gave the states a toolbox to restrain federal government overreach. And the thing I think most people on both sides of the aisle is afraid of is how much debt is too much debt. And
ever since I was a kid, I remember the first political moment I can remember is Ross Perot talking about the dangers of debt. That really left an impression on me. Here we are 30 years later, and what do we still talk about? Debt. And nobody knows how much debt is too much debt. And what can we as a state legislature do to influence this conversation? And so Convention of the States gives that. And what really flipped me on this issue and why I'm passionate about it is because in 2015 we hit 100% of our debt to GDP ratio. That was the first time since World War II. We elected a bunch of people that promised to get Washington's budget in order. What happened? We added $8 trillion in debt after that. That's a problem. That's when you know Washington is addicted to spending. So that's when my mindset switched. This isn't a war between Democrats and Republicans. It's a war between Main Street and Washington. And so this is how we can respond. And I'm proud to be leading the charge in the Senate for this. And I believe we're just a couple votes away from passing it and becoming the 17th state to join other states for calling for a convention. So I'll just leave it at that and pass it over to Tim. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jesse. I told Jesse at the beginning when he came in last year, if he just watched Sesame Street, he could figure out how a bill became a law, but apparently you didn't watch that last year. I gave him one simple assignment and he didn't do it, and I can't believe he didn't do it. But anyway, thank you, Growth Alliance. Thanks for Iowa Central, Jim, the other participants up here. Randy, thanks for making a special effort to get to Fort Dodge. I know you'll love it here, and we've got a lot of great things happening. Thank you all, too, for coming today. A couple things that we're working pretty diligently right now is a supplemental state aid for our K through 12 schools. By law, we need to have that out in 30 days. So we've got 2 full weeks done here, almost 3, and so we need to get that done in the first 30 days of session. So that'll be popping out here within the next week or 2, and then we'll start the negotiations with the House and the governor to come to an equitable amount of funding for our K through 12 schools. Also, the big buzz lately has been the tax reform for the state of Iowa. I had a couple of you come up to me today that are either patrol pensions or IPERS pensions. In the governor's bill, and I think in the House and the Senate's bill, pension income would be tax-free to the people just in the state of Iowa. We can't do anything federally. You're going to have to talk to Randy about that. But we're going to try to do that. The other thing is we're getting hit a lot in the news and from the other side saying that this is another tax cut for the rich. Did you know that if you, as a couple or individual, make over $78,400 a year, that you're paying the highest tax rate of 8.53% in state taxes in the state of Iowa? So I don't know if 74 or 78.4 or $78,400, if you consider that rich or not, but I would imagine it probably, if I had a show of hands and everybody closed their eyes, we could raise our hands. It would probably entail a lot of people that are in this room. So we're looking at the average tax cut for Iowans under this situation to be between $1,500 and $2,000 a year of extra money in your pocket. One of the ways that we feel we can help a little bit with the runaway inflation that we're experiencing. So that's kind of interesting. Another part of the Senate bill that I have to start lobbying for right now, Ann, is the lowering of this is in the Senate bill, lowering of the sales tax to 6%, because a lot of the state is at 7%, and then moving it back to 7% for everyone. And if you remember, about 12 or 15 years ago, the people of Iowa voted for the next sales tax increase. 3/8% of that goes to IWIL, which is water quality, trails, a lot of things that are in Iowa. So by lowering it all to 6, not every county or every community in the state of Iowa has 7 anyway. Matter of fact, then, moving it up to 7, now Amazon and some of these other places that you're ordering online, they're only charging 6 because they're not going to try to keep track of someone from Fort Dodge has 7, somebody from Johnson County has 6, and so this would make the whole amount 7, which increases the revenue a little bit, and then we're going to fund that first 3/8 of a cent back to IWIL. And so I think it's a brilliant idea. Financially, it's not going to cost us that much more because we're going to create some new revenue that we didn't have before, a fair revenue that, we're already paying here in Webster County. And I think that's going to be a great idea as well. So when I sat and listened to the governor and her bold agenda, and then I sat in caucus and listened to our even more bolder agenda, I just started smiling because I said, this is why I'm down here. It's things that are going to impact Iowans in a positive way. It's going to transform Iowa into a place where people want to stay. If we're not taxing your pension income, this is why people are leaving Iowa and going to Florida, is because they can have their entire pension free down there versus paying taxes on it here. And so if we can take away some of those barriers of why people are leaving Iowa, and I know there's warm weather down there too, but it is cheaper to live here as well. So at least it is at this point. But we want to make sure that this is a place that that people want to come to and that they want to stay. And then we're also working on corporate taxes, which I know bores everybody to death of all that stuff. So thank you again. We'll be open to all your questions and fire away. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your opening comments. This kind of a timely, good question. First question I have is related to the state tax reform. Why does the state proposal want to cut state taxes on public employee pension and other pensions while not exempting taxing, or while still taxing 401k revenue? So a person that may be self-employed that goes out and saves their own money through IRAs, the way the bill is drafted now, they're saying is going to still tax that money. So is that something you've considered?
Well, instead of making it tax-free right now, which my goal would be to have no state income tax at all, to get to the point where we're to zero like 7 other states. If we did that, then you wouldn't be taxed on it in the state of Iowa. But I think this is a good start. If we can take the top rate from 8.53 to 4, or the Senate would like 3.6%, that basically is cutting that expense or that tax on your 401k in half right now. So give us some time. I would like to see the same thing, but because I am independent and I have my own 401k as well, so I don't want to seem partisan to the point where it has to benefit me, but I still would like that, because almost everybody in here either has IRAs or 401ks or 403bs or something similar to that. So it's under discussion, but at this point we're stopping with pensions. I hope that answers.
Any other comments from other members? Okay, thank you. Next question is for Congressman Feenstra. Well, what can the U.S. Congress do to help protect ethanol and promote it more so across the country?
Yeah, this is a huge issue. You think of the cornfields right now, every other row goes to ethanol. You think about that. Every other row goes to ethanol production. And so it is a lifeblood for our agricultural community. Sitting on the Agricultural Committee, sitting on Science and Technology Committee, we're doing everything possible when it comes to biofuels, working across the aisle, working with the other representatives in Iowa, trying to figure out what we can do to create more ethanol biofuels and also exporting them. What we need to do is make sure that we have E15 year-round. We have to make sure that the volume limits are increased, and we're also working with companies like Valero and other oil companies that say, hey, this is a great alternative. You want to work together, and we want to lower fossil fuels and use more natural fuels like ethanol and biodiesel, then we got to get together, and we're seeing that happen right now. I've introduced 4 different bills to make this happen, to try to further ethanol and biodiesel and other biofuels. And the big thing is we have to understand Department of Energy, Secretary Granholm, under the Biden administration, came out with a study about 2 months ago that said 4 out of every 5 vehicles by 2050, that's a long time away, that's 28 years from now, will still use liquid fuels. So we get all excited about electric vehicles, but at the end of the day, 4 out of every 5 vehicles still use liquid fuels by 2050. So to me, it's so important for our environment, it's so important for our country that we do more with ethanol and biodiesel and other biofuels and continue to do the research that we can go and be more sustainable in this area. So we're very passionate about it, and we continue to work on it.
Thanks for your strong leadership on that issue, because here at Iowa Central, we like that because we have our fuel testing lab.
Absolutely.
We do a lot of testing.
Yes.
This is for state legislators. With the DNR removing the park employees from their homes in state parks, what is the plan to ensure that the same level of safety will remain in our state parks? And why was this decision made to move rangers out of the parks? Who wants to take that one?
I can start with that. So we met with our local officials about this, and it is a safety issue, especially out at Brushy Park, where there are horse trails, there's a lake, there's hunting, and sometimes there isn't radio communication to bring outside law enforcement there. The people who live on, the person that lives in that park knows the park like the back of his hand, and it's advantageous for them to live there. And I'll let Tim speak to this more. We had this meeting. We are going to meet with Director Lyon addressing this issue. I know that some housing, when I went back to my committee chair, he said the main thing was that the state wanted to get out of the real estate business. But it's not just the real estate business, in my opinion. It's the safety of the citizens. And if there is someone hurt or there is some nefarious activity going on in those parks, those park rangers are the ones that are going to be seeing that first.
Thank you.
So we did actually have a conference call with Sheriff Fleener and myself and Representative Thode or not Representative Thode, County Supervisor Thode and County Supervisor Campbell, and I think some of the things, there's a lot of misinformation out there. One of the things is that they did a actual audit on each of the homes. There's 70 some parks in the state of Iowa, state parks, and a large minimum of those parks actually have rangers that live on site in homes. These homes are not up to code. So if they were to go in and every park ranger and patrol that is living in a park right now, if they were to bring those homes up to code, it would be several $1 million for us to go in. There are kids sleeping in basements with no egress windows. You know, I mean, we've all done that when I was a kid too, but now there's a whole different, I don't know, maybe my parents were trying to get rid of me. I'm not sure what's going on, but you know, to go in and put regresses in or egresses in and to make everything up to code and electrical, you know, that would cost a lot of money. So we've been guaranteed that the service that we are going to receive is going to be the same or better than what we had before. And I will guarantee you that we have supervisors and a sheriff and ourselves that will keep a close eye on that and make sure that that they're following their promise. And if not, we're going to hound them until they come up with a solution of some type that meets the standard of coverage that we're getting right now. So there are, you know, there was also someone that called me and said that, well, what if it snows? They're not allowed to take their vehicles with the plows home so they can come back and open up, you know, open up Dolliver or open up Brushy Creek, and that's not true. They are allowed to take those vehicles home and come back. So, like I said, there's a lot of information out there that isn't true. Go figure. But you know, that's one of the reasons why we had the call. Just we talked directly to her and her people. And are we satisfied that we're losing that? No. But would we be satisfied if we had the same coverage and same service? I guess I'd have to say yes, especially with what they told us. So it's kind of where it stands now, and the rest of the story is yet to be seen.
Okay. Any other comments, Jesse, or is that covered pretty well? Okay. This is, again, for all of the members here. What are your thoughts about the defund the police efforts and the rise in crime in many of our country, cities around the country? So who would like to take that one, about defunding the police?
Well, I'll start. You know, it's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. I mean, I think about when I grew up, right, and even today, that we learn to respect authority. We learn to respect our police force and our peace officers. That's how I grew up, right? They're the ones that kept us safe.
Okay. So everyone can vote. So I don't know who would like to take that.
I'll just quickly say that, you know, the great thing that we have already is that business community, you know, allows workers to get off and stand in line to go vote. I think everybody should have the opportunity to vote. You know, businesses should never be holding people back. But we have so many holidays already. I'm not sure we need another one. We added another holiday this past year, so okay. I think we're pretty good with holidays.
All right, Ann or Jesse or Tim?
I've thought about that quite a bit, and Election Day is a very special day. It's really cool at the end of the night. I'm glad that at the end of the day that we will know in Iowa who the winners are. So I guess I would be somewhat open to that if we keep shortening the window of like the 20, 25 days, whatever, and we honor that day. The more honor that we can give that day, we can maybe trim up the 20 days. I haven't thought about it too much, but I'm a little more open-minded to it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tim or Ann, you want to say anything? Okay.
Sure. It's not something I've thought about either, but I'm not opposed to giving someone a half day off work to go vote on Election Day. We do have a lot of options to vote. We have 20 days pre-election. But, you know, if it does come down to that last day, I wouldn't be opposed to having a 4-hour holiday to make sure people could get out there. I know, as a nurse, I know a lot of nurses work from 7 in the morning until 7:30 at night, and sometimes they don't always walk out the door at 7:30 at night. So if it comes down to that last day, I'm not opposed to it.
Okay, thank you. You want to say? You're okay? All right. Legislation that was passed recently requiring lodging businesses to register their staff as certified and aware of sex trafficking, but the businesses were not allowed to were not alerted to the requirements. Why did you not, or the department not, assure that the DPS was prepared to handle this in a timely fashion? Are you aware that you guys are now requiring hotels to be trained to look for trafficking, and how do you respond to that question?
Yeah, I can speak to that because I'll be running a bill. I think we're going to wait for the House maybe to run it and do a mirrored bill on this. But what happened was we passed last year that our hotels were to be trained on this, and if a state worker was to stay in that hotel and get reimbursed, they had to be a certified hotel with their classes being completed. And I'll tell you right now that government doesn't work the speed of a farmer, independent business owner. When we do things, we do it really quick and efficient, and if we didn't do it right, we do it again, quicker and faster. But we didn't, the rules and the process wasn't completed in time, so when it was given out, I think at the beginning of the session, we had 6 hotels in the state of Iowa that were actually certified, and we had DHS workers that would go to committees for visitations for families or whatever. They'd stay in hotels and they would not be getting reimbursed. And so we're going to run a law or an amendment to that law that pushes back the certification date into July August of this year, and we'll also go retro back and pay everyone that has stayed in any hotel. So no one's out of money. The sad part is there's some that have paid for it on their own credit card. They just haven't been reimbursed yet, but they will be. And the law that we're going to pass, or the amendment, will push that date for the hotels to be up and running. These are online courses so that the hotel workers can take them online, so it's not a class that they have to go attend. They can do them in the evening or whatever. But yeah, another government blunder, and we'll do everything we can to make it right, and everyone that has money out of their pocket will be reimbursed for what they have spent.
Okay. We have a question for Senator Green. He may not be ready to make his announcement at this point, but the person asked, will Senator Green run for re-election, and if so, where? The House or the Senate? In what part of the area? And if you don't want to answer today, you don't have to. But.
Well, so I
To arm wrestle right now?
And if you don't want to answer, I got to ask the question.
I couldn't imagine the Senate without Tim, so I decided to go down to Boone. I just had to move by law 4 miles south of the farm that I have lived at my entire life, and so I thought about just moving 4 miles south, and I ended up, there was an open Senate seat to the south. It's District 24. And I looked at some of the demographics, and 75% of it, roughly, is what I have already represented. And I've already knocked those doors just a year and a half ago. And so by law, I got a little bit lucky where, being as I just got elected, if there was an open Senate seat around me, that I was one of the few senators that could move move into that district and fulfill term. I was elected to a 4-year term. So it's been an interesting change of life the last few years. You know, I've never lived away from home, but I got between moving into the Senate, now physically moving into Boone, it's been a real healthy change. It's really neat to first time living in town. That's different, but it's pretty neat when on days that you don't have anything going on, you can just step outside your house, start door knocking, like right outside your house. That's pretty cool. So that's my plans. I've already publicly announced that that's where I'm going to live and serve out my Senate term. So.
Thank you very much. This is related to Iowa taxes. I am more in favor of eliminating property taxes than income taxes. What would it take to eliminate property taxes? Why should I worry about the country taking my home, or the county taking my home? So the person would prefer property tax reform or reduction.
It'd probably take an act of God to change that. You know, the differences in how property taxes and how state income taxes are used in the state, there's so many differences, and I could probably have the county or Matt come up and tell you the value of the property tax. You know, I do agree. I've been getting some emails and so on situations where the property taxes are raising so quickly that some people now can't do repairs to their homes because they're on a fixed income and they don't have the money to be able to repair their home. They just have to live and pay their property taxes. And so I've been talking to leadership about that. It would also be on a scale of poverty level. You know, if you're age and you're at a certain poverty level, you know, hopefully we could do something to minimize, not to get rid of, but to minimize or try to freeze as much as we could some of those property taxes. But remember, if the assessor is raising the value of your home and the county supervisors are leaving the levy the same, then the amount of money that raised automatically goes up. If the price of your house is assessed higher, but they lower the levy, then your property taxes would probably stay the same. And so it's a two-pronged deal with property taxes. You've got actually two entities that are involved. You've got the assessor that tells you what your house is worth, and everybody wants their house worth if they're going to sell it, right? But if you want to pay taxes on it, you don't want it worth anything, okay? But at the same point, though, that if you do nothing to the levy, and the values of everybody's homes went up 22%, and you leave the levy alone, that means that the revenue that's coming in off those property taxes just went up 22%. So as citizens, and I have called people, and I've actually gone in front of to lower my property taxes, or tried to lower my property taxes before, and I tell people that you need to talk to those two entities, because I don't know how much they talk with each other, but those are the two entities that are responsible for your property taxes of being increased. And you know, we did do a little bit last year with mental health. We were one of 3 states that still we still put mental health funding on the property tax levy. I think it was 39 cents or so a thousand. Next year, that levy will be totally off of the property taxes. So you should see that levy being gone off your property taxes, and we took that over in the state in the general budget. So, like I said, we're one of several states that still had mental health funded through property taxes, and we made that adjustment last year to try to lower property taxes. So
Okay.
that's the best answer I can give, actually. I don't know if,
Any other comments? You think Tim handled it pretty well?
I know Randy knows this because he dealt with it for years.
Yeah, that's the chair of the Ways and Means.
Said it's an act of God. It's a tough one to change.
We have a question for Representative Sexton, but he can't be here today because he's sick, but it's related to daylight savings time. Do any of you from the state legislature have thoughts on the daylight savings time issue?
Yes, so Mike is exercising personal responsibility I always talk about, and he's not feeling good today, and so he stayed home. I knew this question was coming because I talked to the fella who was going to pose it today. So I appreciate the suggestion of all the clocks adjusting half hour one time and then be done with it. The House proposal is, and again, I have signed this bill. I didn't get a chance to sign it this year, but I've signed this bill since I've been in the legislature. So what the bill says is we would stay on daylight savings time year-round. There are 19 states that have already done this, but all the states have to wait until Congress changes the law before it can go into effect. So, Randy?
That's me, huh?
You're welcome. I will put in my 2 cents on this. I've heard from teachers. I've heard from myself. I do not like. That's right. I don't like springing ahead. I do not like losing that hour of sleep. It puts me off schedule. It puts school kids off schedule. I think it makes a lot of people crabby. But I do love gaining that hour in the fall. As far as staying on daylight savings time all year, I would like it that way as well, because you'll have the time in the evening to do activities outside, and so I would definitely support staying on daylight savings time all year round.
Okay, any other comments?
Well, I think this is one of those things that I admire Representative Sexton's persistence on this issue, and I'm willing to vote for it just to honor his persistence on that. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Here's another question related to water quality. Explain changes on the waters of the USA. I don't know if that's really a state or a federal issue, but do you have thoughts?
Yeah. WOTUS, this is a big issue for our producers, our farming community. So under the Trump administration, WOTUS, Changed Waters of the U.S., we were under severe assault by EPA over the last decade, where any time that you had a rainfall of a couple inches, you were fined for anything off your field, and this was a very severe concern. So we got that changed, and now under EPA Director Regan, he came from North Carolina, and now he's the director there. He has said they want to change it and go back to this punitive system. You know, I'm very supportive that we have to have clean waterways, absolutely. And I just want to tell you, as a farmer, and the farming community, my in-laws, you know, everything that we're doing, whether it be buffer strip, no no-till farming. We're doing so much as an industry, as a producer industry, to make sure that our farms are not polluting our streams and rivers and stuff like that. But the EPA, and I had a hearing, or I actually talked with Director Regan last March, and he said, hey, we're not going to do a lot of changes, but now it seems like it's going to get, there's going to be a lot of changes, and they're going to be very punitive. And again, I just don't understand why everybody is so, especially the EPA, is going after our agriculture community so hard. And, what I'm talking about punitive is, thousands, $10, $20, $50,000 worth of fines any time something were to happen. And, we still have rights. We still have land rights. And if there's a little, not even a stream or a creek, but where water runs off my property, that should be controlled by the federal government, that's overreach. That's really overreach. And I'm fighting against this, and in Congress we have a lot of people that are tired of the EPA overreach in this issue.
Thank you very much. Question for Representative Meyer. Why is the state merging DHS with public health? What are the benefits?
That's a great question. So right now we have one director for both departments, Director Kelly Garcia. DHS and public health have a lot of overlap, and the hope is to get that all under one umbrella. So we're looking at child care, foster care, medical system, the medical systems through the state-run institutions. We're hoping to streamline, number one, streamline operations. Number two, and I know one person in the room is very aware of this, but we have a waiver system. So we have Medicaid, and then there's also exceptions to Medicaid where you get different types of benefits. The waiver system is outdated. Some people are getting what they need. For instance, there's an elderly waiver, there's an intellectually disabled waiver, there are 7 or 8 waivers. Everyone on those waivers is some people get more services than they use, some people get less than they use, some don't have a waiting list, some have a 3-year or 6-year waiting list. Dr. Garcia is working on this to redo the waiver systems to make sure we're including more people, the most vulnerable people in our state, to make sure that people are getting the services that they need, the state program. So it's hopefully to be a more streamlined process.
Thank you. Well, I can just say from my standpoint, get through the different roadblocks when it came to delivering our training programs. Representative Meyer, Tim, and Jesse, DHS and Inspections Appeals did a wonderful job, and I think that from our perspective that looks like a good idea to merge those two, so thanks. There's a question regarding juries. As a recent jury member, being aware of a reluctance of witnesses to testify, is there something we can do to protect witnesses so this fear can be reduced or eliminated? So people are intimidated evidently to testify, and they're afraid about their safety. So who would like to answer that question?
I just know from the past, the big issue for me is when you have young kids that have to testify, and you know, that's not right, especially in sexual assault cases and things like that, that to me sometimes identities have to be protected, and I wish our courts did that a little more. You know, this can really devastate a kid to try to get on a stand when their assault victim is sitting right in front of them. That's a really big deal.
And whoever asked that question may want to maybe check in with Sheriff Fleener, because I'm sure he has, you know, he has to protect people in the courthouses. So that's a very good question.
I could take that back to judiciary as well. You know, I mean, see if they've been discussing this or if there is something in the works. I don't know if you can force anybody to testify and then put everybody that we forced to testify in a witness protection plan would be a very expensive and a tedious job. So I'll take it back to judiciary.
Okay. We have just a couple questions left. One for Congressman Feenstra. You know, the federal government's been running on continuing resolutions for months and months and months, and the next one expires middle of February. Where do you see that going, and is there any chance that some compromise will be reached?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely shameful. I mean, this is not the way our country is set up to operate. I mean, you just don't do a continuing resolution. What that means is you're just using the budget from now a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and you just continue to say, okay, we're going to use that same budget, right? We have a system, and you run these budgets through a committee process. And just to be clarified, now there's one party that's in control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, and they're going to do a continuous resolution mid-February. I just got a note yesterday that we have to stay in town because this is going to happen by February 17th. This is not how our founding fathers put our government together. We have to have deliberative thought. It's got to go through committee. It's got to be an open process, and we got to pass a budget. It's got to be a transportation budget. It's got to be a health and human service budget. But what has happened over the last decade is, well, we throw it all into one omnibus budget and we kick it down the road. I'm ashamed of our system, and it's got to dramatically change. And I hope if I get into leadership next year that we change this. I will be passionate about doing that.
Thank you very much. Another question is, what is being done to shorten the supply chains, encourage local businesses and jobs? And if this isn't being done or supported, why not? So what are we doing to help improve the supply chain? Or is that even a state issue?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things there are pinch points in the supply chain. If you look down at the different ports, Port LA, Port Seattle and stuff like that, first of all, we have a lot of issues because of, and really the pinch points become around transport. They have to be certain qualifications to get into the ports. Right now, you have to be 21 or older to transport goods. And you ask anybody, any of our industries, that becomes a problem. There's 10 loads for every one driver. And so you can't get product back and forth. There's also obviously extreme pinch points of having all the goods sitting out in these ports because there's labor rules that say you can only do X, Y, and Z. And to me, there's a lot of things that we can do from the federal side to open up those ports, get the things moving, get these ships unloaded a lot faster than what we are. But we're fighting a bureaucracy, rules and regulations that no one wants to get rid of, or to at least take steps back, and causing these severe pinch points. And it's costing us all a lot of extra money because we got to spend more on all the products that we buy.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the rest question? Can you repeat that?
It is, what work is being done to shorten supply chains, encourage local businesses and jobs? And if this isn't being done and supported, why not?
So as far as supporting local businesses and jobs, every time any one of us goes into a business, number one issue is workforce, number two issue is childcare, and they go hand in hand. So we are working on, number one, apprentice programs to get more workers in with reduced, with some reduced regulations, but some creative ways to get trained workers in under apprenticeship programs. Number two, we are still working on childcare. This year, we've already passed 3 bills through committee to make some of the regulations a little bit more flexible. We've reduced the age of that can work in the childcare thing. We've adjusted the ratios based on DHS suggestions and the suggestion of the child care workforce that Governor Reynolds convened last year with child care stakeholders. And and one more that's escaping my mind right now, but it is in my newsletter, so feel free to look that up. But we definitely are working on workforce and child care hand in hand.
Thank you. Any other comments? Or okay, we've got just 2 questions left. One is Representative Ann Meyer. Explain, you must have a new cell phone bill about regulating phones while driving. Can
Yes.
you explain that?
Yep, thank you. I was going to close with that. So,
Well, we're getting close, so that's kind of
so this is my 3rd year trying to pass this bill in the legislature. What the bill does, right now, And I know there are some people against this bill because, again, people worry about freedoms, and I worry about freedoms too. Right now, we have a bill on the books that gets rid of texting and driving. My bill is hands-free electronic devices. So if someone pulls someone over for texting and driving, they can just say, oh, I was just checking my map, or I was dialing the phone, or talking on the phone, because right now someone can handhold the phone and speak on it. We had a subcommittee again this week. State troopers testified at it. We have over 400 accidents a year. I think it was closer to 440. We have 6, this is just Iowa, 6 deaths last year because of distracted driving with an electronic device, and over $4 million in property damages. And this is a low estimate, because they can't prove that they can't prove that other people, that was the cause of their accident. So what this does is it says you cannot have any device in your hand. And if you don't have that integrated in your car, if you have a smartphone, there's an app you can buy for $2.99 to make your cell phone hands-free. You can just do voice commands. What the state trooper said, and what another advocate said, was not only are you holding something and focusing on something, it's not just talking. I know people think that talking on the phone is distracting, and it can be, but when you're holding something and focusing on something else, it's a two-part of your brains that are not focusing on the road. Also, what was mentioned in subcommittee is it's actually worse than drunk driving. If you don't wear your seatbelt in your car, I can see that, you know, that's fine. You're just hurting yourself. But when you're driving distracted like this, you're hurting other people. You have the potential of hurting anyone else on the road, and it's happening. And I'll bet there's no one in this room that hasn't been driving down the highway and looked over and someone was looking down at their phone and never looked up for minutes, because it's happened to me. It happens to me just about every week. So I've got a little bit more support in committee this year. I only had 1 no vote, and I'm happy to report the Senate's actually run it through subcommittee this year too, and it's, I didn't get a chance to watch Iowa Press last night, but apparently Senator Whitfer is thinking it's going to get through his committee, the Senate as well. So I'm hoping, for me, 3rd time's a charm. I think it's a very important bill.
Yeah. Any other comments, Tim or Jesse?
Yeah, I was wondering why we wouldn't do total hands-free.
That's what it is.
Food, hairdressing, makeup.
And I get that argument as well. I think it's...
And whatever else is coming later. I mean, who knows? It's cell phones now. It's going to be something else. I mean, if you're doing...
Again...
If you're doing your hair, or you're doing your makeup, or you're eating, you've got something in your hand or hands, and you're looking in the mirror, or you're looking back to... I guess there's more to it than just cell phones.
Well, I agree there's probably more to it than cell phones, but as one of the troopers described, not only are you focusing on what you're doing in your hand, your mind is also focusing on what's going on in the hand. So you're taking 2 senses away rather than just picking up a fry and watching the road.
Okay.
Unless you're eating soup, I don't think that's okay.
Thank you both very much. We have one last question, and it's kind of detailed, so I'll ask whoever asked this up and talk to Congressman. What real benefit does it have for the U.S. to get involved if the Russians invade Ukraine? What national interest does that have in behalf to us?
Well, I think we and our allies, you know, first of all, we never want a country to invade another country. I mean, I think we're past that in society. You know, we saw that what happened in World War II. If you start allowing a country to invade one country, then what happens next? Why does Russia want Ukraine so bad? Because Ukraine is sort of the breadbasket of that area. They have a lot of precious minerals. Putin knows what he's doing. And so I think we have to, you know, we are still the most country in the world. And we have to make sure day, and we produce this republic democracy all over the country and all over the world. When you have another communist country going after another country, I think we have to work with our allies and say, no, this shouldn't happen. And so we'll have to see how this plays out. But there's a lot of things that we can do without sending out our troops and stuff like that. And I'm fighting with this every day in Congress right now, is saying, you know what, there's a lot of punitive damages that we can do to Russia, and we should have done them not yesterday. We should have done them 2 months ago for them starting to amass their troops on that border. But, to me, we learned from World War II. We just cannot have countries taking over other countries, especially when it's all for the reasoning of we want their breadbasket of fruits and all this other stuff and their precious minerals.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's time for closing comments. We want to thank you all for coming today and thank all you in the audience. I think we'll start on the other end with the closing comments with Senator Kreinbrink and then end up with Congressman Feenstra. So thank you. Tim, got a couple minutes.
Thank you, Iowa Central, and all of you for sticking this out with us, and Jim for being the moderator. I just want to close by saying Iowa's in a good spot. I think people around the nation are pretty envious of where Iowa is, and Iowa leads on a lot of issues, which I think is pretty cool. We have our leaders go to conferences all the time that all the other leaders from the other states are wondering how we get to where we're at and how we got here. This tax cut that we're looking at right now is not something that we just dreamed overnight. I said this yesterday on Divine's show that, we've been working on this for 4 years to make sure we kept our spending in check and make sure we kept our reserves full and continued a pattern. And every time we do our budget, we look on a 5-year conservative budget to make sure the things that we do in 5 years we're going to be as strong or stronger than what we are today. And if we're not, then we don't do it. And so by working for the last 4.5 years to get our fiscal house in order for the state of Iowa, so that we're allowing to do some of the neat things that we're able to do right now, like the tax-free pension and lowering the rate. These things that we just didn't wake up, but we have been working toward this for a long time. We don't take that lightly. We have a vision, and we're following through with that vision. And I want you to know that everybody up at these three tables treat the money that you give us and our money that we give us like it is our own. And so thanks again, and I'm proud to live in Iowa. I'm proud to have kids that are in Iowa and grandkids in Iowa, and it's our goal to continue to make it better for everyone to live. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to serve, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, it's so many faces, and now we're kind of coming out. It seems like we're slowly coming out of COVID here, and I sense a attitude change with a lot of people where we're grateful for relationships and grateful for more grateful for a lot of things. So it's really neat to see this big attitude shift with just a year and a half of being in the legislature. But in closing, I think I feel led to highlight the governor's education proposal. We have been so bold on the issues, and there's been over 20 states that have implemented some sort of school choice system. I've said it many times that as a farmer, I invest in inputs and fertilizer for corn, beans, hay, and so many different crops because they're valuable to our operation. That's how we make our living. Education is our #1 priority, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. And in Iowa, we have a vibrant homeschool environment, a vibrant private school environment, and a vibrant public school environment, and we should treasure them all. But we only really invest in one. The governor came out with a proposal that I was just amazed by, that for low and middle income families to be able to have ESA, education savings account, voucher, whatever you want to call it, to which we give $7,200 per public school student for state money. Altogether, it's over $17,000 we get per student. But so of that $7,200, the average private school tuition is $5,200. So that child will get $5,200 to be able to find the education's environment of their choice. I always thought that we would take that extra $2,000 that's not spent and put it into the general fund and use it for tax cuts or something like that. She said we're going to give that to small and rural school districts. I was just blown away by that proposal. Not only politically was that pretty savvy, but practically savvy as well. And so a lot of rural legislators were afraid of school choice because they thought it could only hurt their schools. I challenged them to rethink this. Why would you vote against this bill? It's 90% of the ESA dollars are going to be used in urban areas and down Des Moines where those schools are intentionally breaking the law. And we have a lot of good public schools here, top-notch schools. We don't really have those issues, so we need to hold those schools accountable, and school choice does that. And rural school districts are going to win with this proposal. So I challenge school boards, I challenge everybody that cares about education in our environment to really think about the governor's proposal, because she made a bold plan, and she's a very popular governor for a reason. She has a great vision for this state, and I hope and pray that we'll come to a compromise on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Meyer?
Thanks again, everyone, for coming out and the great questions. Just going forward, we're going to work on human resources to get the health policy to help Iowans have health access to all types of health care throughout the state of Iowa, including rural Iowa. I also serve on the HHS budget. The HHS budget is what funds health policy. It is the second largest expenditure in the state. It's about a $2 billion budget. So I want to make sure $2 billion of your tax dollars are being spent to keep Iowa healthy and strong. Thanks.
Thank you. Congressman Feenstra.
Well, hey, Jim, thank you so much for putting this on. Iowa Central, thanks for that we could have this area to do this, and Growth Alliance also for putting this all together. And I just want to thank each one of you. You guys, again, every one of you, we are government. We're the taxpayer citizens, and we represent you. All of us here represent you, and hopefully we're doing a great job, but I'm telling you, we take this very seriously, and that's why I'm here. I am here that I can listen to your thoughts, your ideas, questions, so I can take those back to Congress. Finally, to me, the biggest problem we have right now is our $30 trillion debt that we put $8 trillion to in the last year and a half, which now has created uncontrollable inflation. And it's affecting us all. We sit around the dinner table and you start looking at your budget of what you're paying for gas, what you're paying for groceries, hardware, and all this other stuff. It's gone up from anywhere from 8 to 30%. And here's our problem. The feds look at it now, and the feds look at it and say, well, we got to increase interest rates. But they realize if they start increasing interest rates, the $30 trillion debt that we're paying 2% interest on, all of a sudden you raise it 1%, all of a sudden you're raising that interest rate on your $30 trillion debt, and that's going to create an even for debt spiral for us. This is a really scary time. It's a really concerning time. We have to do what Iowa did. We have to get to a balanced budget. We've got to figure out a way to get our spending under check. And that's my path. That's what I plan to do in Congress. I am a fiscal hawk, and I will do everything possible to get us back to a balanced budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. And they're going to stick around for a little bit, so if you want to mingle personally with them, go ahead. Thanks again for coming.